Hello everyone, today, as you know, we're going to be taking a look at the SpeedyBee Adapter 3. Just a quick look, as well as a quick look at the SpeedyBee F7 35 amp flight stack. That one has USB-C and Bluetooth on this, so if you have this stack, you don't even need something like this. But as you might know, I fly here at the house. I fly out back, I fly from the kitchen table, and I haven't reviewed the SpeedyBee adapter, the original one that came out, or the version 2 that came out. I've never even thought about getting a OTG cable to use my phone to be able to get into beta flight and make changes. But as I've kept this nearby, I actually found it came in handy. Who would have thought? And to get it jump started, right here on screen you see the differences between the SpeedyBee Adapter 3 versus Adapter version 2 and an OTG cable. Basically, as we work down that list, some of the bigger features, at least the ones that stick out to me, is that it has both USB types that we use in this hobby, the micro as well as the Type-C connector. This one can also charge your phone. It can fast charge your phone. It's got a built-in voltage checker, which I don't know about you, but if I take out handfuls of batteries, sometimes I'm not certain which one I just flew or I flew 2 batteries ago, so that can be quite handy and something that I used. But the primary feature, in my opinion, is the ability to get into beta flight, but we'll do that. But this one does 1 to 6S, and proof of concept, I got a little 1S battery out here. We'll plug that in. It does its little spinny thing, and it tells me this one's fully charged, 4.2, 4.3 volts. I would like to see one more decimal place on there, but that's just me. And of course, we can use the XT60 connector up here to check our XT60 base batteries. 16.1 on that one. Now the downside, no, it doesn't do XT30. So we have to have a little adapter with us too. One more thing to carry. Got our USB port right over here where we can charge our phone. So you plug in your battery, plug in your phone. Can quick charge your phone depending upon what your phone supports. And then we have this cable with our micro USB connector there on one side and our micro or our USB-C connector here on the other side, and you just swap them around depending upon what sort of flight controller you're trying to connect to. So if you've got micro USB, plug in the USB-C connector into the SpeedyBee adapter, and you got your micro connection available to plug in your flight controller. And then just the opposite is true. Let me turn this so you can see it. Now we plug in the micro side, and then we have the USB-C connector available to us to connect to our flight controller. Let's get my phone out and we'll take a look at one real quick. So first things first for me, because I'm a micro guy, I've got a little adapter here. Plug that into our XT60. I'm going to plug in a little 2S battery here. And there we go, fully charged USB. Let's see, this one, Diatone Roma, the little guy, we got USB-C, so I believe I got it on this way, if I can get this out. This is something that has always kind of plagued me a little bit, is these really stick in there. Connected to our flight controller. Got the SpeedyBee app right here. We have to sit through an ad. Now we've got the interface up. Let's just connect over Bluetooth here. We see we've got an adapter here, so let's connect. So we've got a blue interface telling us that we connected via Bluetooth here, and we've got all of our little menus over here via the SpeedyBee app, which is free. You do have to sit through an ad unless you are a premium member. But as you can see, you can take a look at your ports. Everything slides over, nice little animations. You can change your port settings if you choose to. Let's go into something a touch more interesting. Let's go into PID tuning. You can see here I don't have sliders enabled. We'll take a look at that when we connect to the F7 flight stack here. So you can change these different settings. You can change your rate profiles just like you would in anything else. It also tells you up here the gyro and accelerometer. We don't have a barometer, magnetometer, GPS, or sonar. If we were to go into the receiver tab here, this would be where we would see our receiver. If we were to move things around, it were to be powered on. This does not support firmware flashing. They still want you to plug in your USB like a caveman to do your firmware flashing. But that's generally what this adapter can be used for. And one of the things that I tended to use it, you may have seen my Diatone Roma MXC 3.1 review where I had one of my elements right dead center, and it's actually throttle, and it's usually up there. Of all the times I've taken quads out to review, that was the first time that I can recall I'd flat out forgotten to put my OSD elements and select the ones I want in the OSD tab. It was default. So I used this in order to move things around, and then I forgot to move the throttle position into the top right. It was actually in the center. We also have the font manager, and then we can save that right down here. Let's take a quick look at the flight stack. So looking at the flight stack, everything's pretty traditional. This is the 8-bit ESC, so BLHES. This is not the 32-bit version you probably have been hearing quite a bit about. So this is a 35 amp. You should be able to run that on appropriate sort of amp draw for your motor prop, battery cell combination. And this one over here, actually the flight controller, these are so small, I can kind of make out the letters, but not very well. So I'm just going to put this image here on screen so that you can see them much more clearly than maybe even I can see. And we've got these LEDs on the left-hand side, just like they show in the image. The manual kind of makes you think you have to wait for the green LED to be lit up in order to be able to connect over Bluetooth. That's not my experience. My experience is that you connect to Bluetooth and then the green light lights up. It's also got black box on there, so if you do your tuning via black box or need that for any old reason, it's available to you. They have this section down here at the lower part that's kind of dictated for DJI air units or Caddx air unit lights, depending upon which version you're running. But obviously, you could use those pads for other purposes as well. It doesn't have to be for just your DJI stuff. It does have a 3.3 volt on there, so that's handy if you're running a Spectrum satellite receiver. And we have our Bluetooth port. And then we have our connector that we connect down to the ESC, and you can see the pin out for that. And this flight stack also supports not just M2 20x20 mounting, but M3 20x20 mounting. You can see here we get an extra set of gummies. These come stock, already placed inside, but we get some M3 screws and gummies to fit appropriately, and a bunch of M2 screws in order to fit your M2 mounting, of course. It also comes with the needed wiring harness, of course, a 35 volt 470 microfarad capacitor, as well as a battery lead that does have an XT30 attached to it. So I've got the flight controller plugged into USB-C, of course, and we're getting our red and blue lights. And we don't have the green light, as I mentioned previously. But if we get the app out and we press Bluetooth, which that has built in, shows our flight controller, smart, SpeedyBee F7 Mini, and we're connected, and now you can see the green light on it. So we have all the same different sorts of layouts. Of course, we go to the VTX table. Oh, it didn't like that. Let me go to VTX table. Oh, it still doesn't like that. Let me scroll up a touch. Now, then we get the same sort of warning we would in desktop beta flight. Go into some other setting. Just go take a look at what we can take a look at. Oh, I know what we wanted to look at. The ports. We're always curious about the ports. Of course, it supports DJI, so we shouldn't have a problem with the number of ports that it supports. But as you can see here, we've got UART 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So plenty of UARTs there to use at our disposal, whether you're doing canvas mode for HD0 or you're using a DJI Air Unit Lite or a Caddx Air Unit Lite, however we're supposed to refer to that now. Tells you right up here what we're connected to, the target, as well as the Betaflight version that is installed on the board. And it gives our CPU load right over here, and then this number over here is the amount of black box data that we have available to us. Now, one thing that I have not quite figured out is if you go into the OSD, which I have a few times, and you move things around, you tap it, then you kind of drag it. You can do that to all sorts of stuff. Wherever you want, you can add battery efficiency. Woo, battery efficiency. Put that down over here. Let's see. How about core temperature? No one uses that, right? And this does get warm, by the way. We can drag those things. And we also have the font manager down here. We can select the different fonts that are available. I'm not going to do that right now. But something that I'm always curious, I go save. Now, how do I exit this? How do I... That just disconnected me. If I go back into it, and I go back to the OSD, how do I get from the OSD back to the menu? I don't know. If I swipe, it'll disconnect us. If I hit that button, it'll disconnect us. We've got expert mode up there. We could change that. Maybe that will give me, well, let's switch me back. to this view. That's not what I want. I want to go back into expert mode. I guess that's one way I could do it, but every time I go to OSD and I want to leave OSD, I can never figure out how to get out of it. I always hit save and then I disconnect and then I come back into it. So if someone can clue me in there, I would sure appreciate it. And while I was playing here, I found something fairly interesting. If we just tap on one of these, they collect themselves. I don't know why we would have that feature, but it's there. But I still can't figure out how to get out of here. So just a quick look at those two products today. You know, it takes me a long time to do a build, so when it comes to the SpeedyBee F7 Mini, I probably won't even get around to using that until spring. But for those of you that have watched all the way here to the end, and you have a SpeedyBee adapter, whether it's this version or another version, how handy have you found it? What use cases have you found specifically handy? And do you fly close to home, like me? Or do you travel out, maybe you got a big 5-inch or maybe even a bigger quad than that, and do you travel out and that's why you carry this with you? Maybe this is in your tool belt with your soldering iron and your hex drivers and the various tools you might need as you travel to an interesting place to go fly. Very curious how many of you have found this to be handy as well. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.